It is the year 2017. I was a proud Wii U owner at the time, but couldn't find a Switch, so I decided that the Wii U would finally fulfill its purpose, to play the Zelda game that had been promised to me all those years ago. I went in as blind as I could. I always do for Zelda, but what I got wasn't quite what I was expecting. You see, I'm not really a fan of most open world games, but Breath of the Wild showed me something else. It showed me that not every journey is told by the developers. It showed me the beauty, wonder, and awe I had only previously found hiking in nature. One of the things I've learned from hiking in nature is that the well-trodden path rarely offers the greatest reward. Sometimes it's the harder path, the steeper one, the snow-covered one, that gives you memories for a lifetime. I'll share one of mine. This hike led us up a mountain mostly clear of snow, but its peak remained covered. Our goal was a beautiful lake at the top. The trail was steep and full of switchbacks, hardly one for beginners. We had done several other hikes beforehand just to prepare for this one. But what sticks out to me after all these years isn't the lake itself. It's part of the path. Just before the peak, we came across a thin trail running alongside a relatively mild slope. Falling wouldn't send you tumbling down to your doom, but you would slide down a ways. And since we were backpacking, getting back up wouldn't be easy. The trail was manageable until we reached one particular section. A clean sheet of snow ran down the slope, cutting across the path. Hikers before us had carved out footholds in the snow, making it possible to cross, but hardly guaranteed. Before me, one of my friends attempted the crossing, only to lose their footing midway. They slid a short distance down the gravelly slope. Nothing dangerous, but enough to startle them. But you see, I'm scared of heights, or more specifically, falling. And now I had to cross the same path. Turning back wasn't an option. There were people behind me. The peak was right there. So I swallowed my fear and went forward. Halfway across, I almost slipped on one of the footholds. My heart jumped, but I caught myself. In the end, I made it across without falling, despite, or perhaps because of, my nervousness. Not long after, we arrived at the lake. The sun had set. We had hiked all day to get there. And it was worth it. That moment has stayed with me for over 14 years. Breath of the Wild is a microcosm of what made that hike so unforgettable. Discovery in its purest form isn't about the destination. It's about the journey and the struggles it took to get there. The feeling of stepping into the unknown, of carving your own path, is unlike anything else. It's a game designed to give you stories, to let you explore and discover on your own. No one else will experience it quite like you. Most open world games feel like checking boxes off a list, not actual discovery. Even if you don't know what the place is yet, it wasn't your discovery. It was the developers. They marked all the destinations. They traced all your paths. They never trusted you to carve your own. Nintendo did. Instead of insisting on their own story, they looked to nature. Much like in nature, the world of Breath of the Wild is cold and indifferent to your presence. The elements, the terrain, they don't bend to you. To cross them, you must overcome them. Much like in nature, the world beyond what you see every day can be both alien and wondrous. If it were anything else, it would already be known. To step into the unknown is to discover something beyond yourself. Much like in nature, Breath of the Wild does not define everything for you. The world is yours to interpret, to find meaning in. Yes, it has a loose story of its own, but its real purpose is to ground you in the mountain and tell you why you're climbing it. The story it wants to tell most is your own. This is your mountain. Now conquer it. But even the greatest hikes require some preparation. So Nintendo made the Great Plateau, a brilliant blueprint for how you should interact with its world. The game doesn't hold your hand. It presents a simple goal, a hostile yet beautiful world, and says, figure it out. So I did. I explored nearly every inch, and through its systems, Breath of the Wild gave me countless stories, just like the hikes of my childhood. I remember sprinting through the desert with nothing but a bunch of uncooked hydromelons, desperately moving from one patch of shade to the next to escape the heat. I remember searching frantically for water as I scrambled around Death Mountain, desperately trying to be less on fire. I remember trekking through the bitter cold of Hebra, a torch in hand, as I made my way towards the Rito. I remember getting caught in a thunderstorm in Faron, desperately looking for shelter, only to realize there wasn't any, and I'd have to adapt. I remember seeing my first dragon, the awe of watching it rise accompanied by majestic music, and trying to follow it until I eventually lost sight of it. None of these were my destination, but they became part of my story. But all of these are memories of my first playthrough of Breath of the Wild. Indeed, even during my hikes, my memories are of the path up, never the path down. Even though in some ways, going down is harder than up, because discovery is an ephemeral thing. It only happens once. And as a game built entirely around that feeling, Breath of the Wild only works once. And so the new gears of the engine that drive Tears of the Kingdom grind against a broken gear. A gear that already spent its use in 2017. A gear that only worked once. And so this new engine can never purr as Breath of the Wild once did when it was new. It can only sputter as the new gears attempt to spin their broken partner. That gear is the world of Breath of the Wild. And they should have never used it. Because Tears of the Kingdom broke. Because Breath of the Wild only works once. First, let's establish something up front. The primary reason I love Breath of the Wild is the feeling of discovery. That's what made it special and unique among open-world games. It is a fact that most of its systems and design are built around the idea of giving this feeling. So I feel strongly that it is the core appeal of the game. Second, for the pedantic nerds in the crowd, like myself, yes, discovery applies to any instance of finding something new. It applies to the first time you use Fuse, the first time you see a Gleeok, even the first time you reach a new destination. And no, a journey is not required to discover a place by its literal definition. It just has to be new to you. But if we use that broad definition, then every game with a new environment is about discovery. By that logic, Skyward Sword is as much a game about discovery as Breath of the Wild is, which is obviously ridiculous. So the definition we're using here today is a game built truly on the feeling of discovery is a game about a journey of discovery, not just seeing some new things or having an aha moment. Those are part of the journey of discovery, but they aren't the whole picture. Third, discovery only happens once. By definition, something can only be new to you the first time you experience it. Any encounter with the same place afterwards falls into rediscovery, which has its own unique rewards, but is fundamentally a different experience. Fourth, you might argue that the first experience is always the best in a game, and that this isn't unique to Breath of the Wild. First, I'd say that's patently untrue. See Tetris, most roguelikes, or any game built on a strong gameplay foundation. If you're saying this, you're probably referring to a game with a strong linear story focus. And yeah, games like that often do struggle with replayability. Guess what Breath of the Wild doesn't have? A strong story focus. That's why we're talking about this today. I want to talk about the interesting aspects of discovery that make a heavily gameplay-focused game, like Breath of the Wild, only work once, and how this unique quirk harms Tears of the Kingdom. And as a final short disclaimer, this video isn't meant to suggest that your opinion, or anyone else's, is invalid, nor that any type of player's opinion is more valid than the others. It is also not arguing that Tears of the Kingdom's flaws are somehow Breath of the Wild's fault. Breath of the Wild didn't choose to have its world reused. That was a decision made for Tears of the Kingdom, and that choice, along with any other flaws it may have, are its own. With all that out of the way, we can dive into discovery. So, what exactly makes Breath of the Wild sense of discovery work? I think 4 key factors create the feeling. First, unfamiliarity. Discovery only happens when you're facing the unknown. Second, trust. The game trusts you to explore on your own. No handholding, no forced path. You decide how to tackle the world. Third, impact. Something has to leave a lasting impression, whether it's danger, conflict, or sheer awe. And finally, uniqueness. The novel nature of actions the player can take, or of the area in general. So let's break this down using one of my own experiences. I remember desperately seeking out water as I was running around Death Mountain, trying to be less on fire. So for the first factor, which is unfamiliarity, the panic of suddenly catching fire, and scrambling for a solution, which made it memorable. The second factor of trust, the game let me be here before I was prepared. For the third factor of impact, the heat, or more precisely, being on fire. And then for the fourth factor of uniqueness, my specific solution, running towards water instead of just using a potion. This framework doesn't just work for video games. You can use it for real-life examples too. Take hiking in the snow. The first factor of unfamiliarity, it was my first time hiking in conditions like this, so it stood out to me. The second factor of trust, the real world doesn't hold your hand, and those around me trusted that I could handle the hike. The third factor of impact, the risk of slipping in the snow. And the fourth factor of uniqueness, the specific footholds I chose and my way of crossing them. But there is one example among the ones I gave that seems like an outlier. I remember seeing my first dragon, watching it rise to a majestic music, completely in awe as I tried to follow it, until I eventually lost sight of it. At first, this seems different to the other examples. There's no real struggle or danger, but impact doesn't have to be violent or dangerous. The dragon left a lasting impression just through awe instead of conflict. And that's the key. All four factors must be there for a discovery to become a true player story. A moment that sticks with you. A discovery you made. Tears of the Kingdom gets the last three factors right, borrowing them from Breath of the Wild as it does. But it stumbles on the first, the most important one, unfamiliarity. For a more illustrative example, let's go through one of my most memorable moments in the game, how I got the Master Sword. After finishing the first dungeon, I got curious about Korok Forest and attempted to enter. I wanted to see if the Master Sword was still there, but I couldn't find my way through the maze route at all. Then I had an idea. What if I entered through the depths? At that point, I had barely explored the depths at all. Only 2 light routes to my name, and I didn't even have auto build yet. So I went for it. I started carving my way towards Korok Forest, hoping I could use Ascend to enter from below. But I took the long way around. And by that, I mean entirely the wrong way. You see, I entered the depths from here, right next to Korok Forest. The way to the entrance to Korok Forest is just a little north of that exit, but I went west instead. I ended up getting sidetracked so much, I even stumbled upon the Fire Temple early. I couldn't do anything there since I hadn't started that quest yet, but it made me believe the depths were filled with much more fascinating things than they ended up actually containing. At the time though, because I had a goal, the depths felt like a dangerous, exciting place, an environment full of mystery and danger. And because I was forging my own path with no guidance from the game, it felt like an adventure. Eventually I found the place where I could use Ascend into Korok Forest, and I followed that thread until I got the Master Sword. Because my route took me through places I was unfamiliar with, it ignited my curiosity, and I ended up creating my own little player story that I'll never forget. Out of all my moments in Tears of the Kingdom, this is the one that stands out the most. The one time it managed to recapture the magic of discovery. Outside of the Great Sky Island, of course, that was great too. However, the feeling of discovery only happened when I was interacting with entirely new content. And that's the issue. Once the unfamiliarity fades, the game stops pushing me to engage with the other 3 principles. The moment I knew my way around the depths, that sense of discovery was gone. By bypassing the broken gear, Tears of the Kingdom managed to recreate that feeling of discovery, at least in part. And the developers know it too. Ever wonder why Tears of the Kingdom lets you skip so much of the landscape? You might think it's an oversight, but it's not. The developers understand their game. They know that for returning players, the only meaningful reward is their destination, if they take the same path they did in Breath of the Wild. So, they try to change that path, by any means necessary, while keeping the same world. How? By adding paths above and below via the sky and the depths, essentially bypassing the broken gear. In theory, this is genius. New players get to experience discovery in full, since they'll be curious enough to explore rather than launch themselves into the air or plunge immediately into the depths. Returning players, meanwhile, can reach familiar locations faster and in ways they never imagined. It should be foolproof, but there's a problem. For this to work, the new gears of the sky and the depths would need to be load-bearing. For returning players, their sense of discovery entirely hinges on whether these additions are strong enough to support it. And here's where it all falls apart. The sky and the depths aren't designed to bear that weight. They're treated as little more than a thread to string a needle, a means to an end. When I said earlier that Tears of the Kingdom gave me only one true moment of discovery, I meant it. The depths don't stop existing after that. But this is one of the very few times you're asked to interact with them in an interesting way. The problem? They're monotonous. Your first trip into the depths is incredible, but after that, every region looks and plays the same. You throw bright bloom seeds, you fly over obstacles, the first time is fun, but after that, uniqueness dies. The depths fail one of the core requirements for discovery: uniqueness. The sky, on the other hand, is truly breathtaking. Skydiving was some of the most fun I had in the game, but I don't remember any specific trips into the sky, because beyond the first time, there aren't many ways it can leave a lasting impact. That first skydive fills you with wonder and awe, but after that, it struggles to create new moments of awe. That's because the threshold for impact through spectacle alone is incredibly high. The sky never stops being beautiful, but the feeling it gives you stops being special. On the other hand, the landscapes of Breath of the Wild were also stunning, but they had something more. They had real resistance, something to push back against you. That's what the sky lacks. There's nothing up there to challenge you while airborne. There's no unique systemic thing that creates impact. Well, technically, weather effects exist up there, but unless you find opening your inventory a compelling story, they don't contribute any meaningful challenge. Worse, they're not unique to the sky. You've already encountered and solved these problems in Breath of the Wild. There's no new discoveries in overcoming them. The sky doesn't even offer fresh ways to deal with these obstacles. In fact, it limits them. In Breath of the Wild, overcoming environmental challenges meant creative problem solving. In the sky, the solutions are reduced to binary choices. Do you have the right clothes? Potions or food? No? Then you're going back to the ground to use the same alternate solution you had in Breath of the Wild, causing the sky to fail one of the pillars, in this case, impact. Well, on second thought, there is one other option. You could slap a flamethrower onto a vehicle to get through the cold, but in principle, it's not really that much different from using a torch, and it works just as well on the ground. Plus, it drains your battery like crazy, so it's not exactly practical. In fact, there's all kinds of creative solutions. You know what? Let's address the Ultrahand in the room. If I get pushback on the premise of this video, the strongest argument would come from Ultrahand. And let me be clear, this isn't about whether Ultrahand is good or bad. Ultrahand is an amazing system. People love it. It taps into the spirit of invention, letting you build practically anything. But that's not the point. Ultrahand isn't about exploration. It's about invention. I understand why people might bring it up. It allows for creativity and problem solving, which can feel like a kind of discovery. But in this video, we're talking about discovery through exploration, which we have defined as a journey of discovery. Ultrahand offers discovery through invention. But that's not the same thing. And because it doesn't contribute to the kind of discovery this video is about, it is outside the scope of this discussion. But if you would like to talk about it regardless, feel free to put any questions in the comments. But this has already derailed the video enough as it is. So to be short, because it's different, I do not think it's enough to bypass the gear. Ultimately, choosing to concentrate on only it ignores the rest of the game. So despite all these attempts to work around it, Tears of the Kingdom still fails to recreate the same feelings of discovery as Breath of the Wild. But why do we have to work around the gear in the first place? Surely the updates to the overworld are enough. But it isn't enough. No amount of changes would be enough. Our brains fundamentally interact differently with familiar environments than they do the unfamiliar. This is because we carry the memories of our previous journey into the environment, and our curiosity is informed by what is different rather than what is. This is what makes the feeling of rediscovery so unique to Discovery. This means that under Rediscovery, your mindset becomes distinctly more goal-based. Your journey has already been filled in by your previous adventure, so you care only about your destination, or more specifically, what has changed about your previous destinations. For a more illustrative example of what I mean by this goal-oriented approach, let's look at the Hero's Path maps from both Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. As you can see from Breath of the Wild's map, I have explored the vast majority of it, often in a disorganized manner. This is because I mostly chased my curiosity as I explored the map. For Tears of the Kingdom, you can see I haven't explored large portions of the map in its entirety and took fairly direct routes to many locations. This is because my motivations had changed. This simple change in motivation has profound effects on how you interact with the game, because your interest is no longer in striking your own path and creating your own story. Your interest is to find out how the developers have updated their own story. This is why one of the fundamental pillars mentioned for Discovery to work is unfamiliarity, because of this change in motivation. It affects one of the two core aspects of my pillar system. Those two aspects that help them form memories are curiosity and stickiness. Impact and uniqueness represent stickiness, meaning that they help memories stay in your brain after they are made. You might remember that impact and uniqueness were the two things that the depths and the sky lacked, respectively. This is why your activities in them didn't stick with you, despite your curiosity to explore them. Unfamiliarity and trust fuel curiosity, meaning that they drive you to create these memories in the first place. The reason trust is necessary is because without it, you become overly focused on destinations marked by the developers, rather than your own journey, shifting the focus to the developer's story. Unfamiliarity works much the same way, but instead of the developer making the checkbox for you, you brought your own checkbox made from your knowledge of the previous game. You made it because you know what's out there, and you just want to know what's different. But what about trust? Tears of the Kingdom very much still respects the player the same way Breath of the Wild did, and unfamiliarity should very much not affect this principle directly. Perhaps it can fix the problem. Unfortunately not, because while it is not directly affected, it works together with unfamiliarity. You need both for it to work. Just unfamiliarity isn't enough, and just trust isn't enough. As mentioned earlier, they work together to achieve the same purpose. Without both working, the obstacles to discovery are not removed. It's the same principle for stickiness as well. The depths and the sky only lacked one of the elements of stickiness each, and without both, the memories won't stick. That's not all. Familiarity impacts stickiness in general, because the more familiar you are with something, the less impact it has, and the more you already know about an event, the less likely you are to create your own unique narrative around it. This is why unfamiliarity is referred to as the most important pillar, because without it, all other pillars collapse. With that collapse, all that is left is familiarity and rediscovery. And perhaps that is enough, but rediscovery simply cannot ever substitute discovery, because they are fundamentally different experiences with different rewards that left my playthrough of Tears of the Kingdom feeling hollow. In the end, I put around 70 hours into the game and completed roughly half the shrines. At the time, I couldn't put my finger on why I stopped, but the magic just wasn't there anymore. After finishing the campaign, except for Ganondorf, I found myself looking up shrine locations, duping materials, and going through the motions. My desire to engage with the game on its own terms had faded. I was just chasing one last goal: complete all the shrines. But even that goal lost its meaning. The process felt empty. the magic wouldn't come back. So I did the one thing I told myself I wouldn't. I went and killed Ganondorf, finishing the game with half the shrines still incomplete. Shortly after that, I dropped the game entirely, because the magic of discovery was gone. So despite Nintendo's best efforts, the world's changes didn't make a huge difference. The game was still running on the same broken gear. So I present you with a conundrum. What do you do about the broken gear? What would you have done differently? Would you have changed the story to be a direct follow-up to Breath of the Wild, fully committing to Rediscovery? How? First, let's consider what Breath of the Wild was designed to do. Its story is built in a completely open-ended format meant to be experienced in any order. Nintendo framed the narrative around an amnesiac Link, turning the story into a mystery about what happened 100 years ago. This design complements the spirit of discovery. It naturally makes you inquisitive about the areas you explore, and because every location plays a part in that history, exploration feels like it contributes to a greater understanding of the world. The way the story is delivered mirrors this design. Each memory provides small snippets of the past, and the Divine Beast cutscenes reveal what happened to the champions. So what happens when you take this format and try to tell a brand new, standalone story? You get Tears of the Kingdom. Because here's the thing. Part of what makes Breath of the Wild so excellent is how singular its world is. It was built around what happened 100 years ago, the ancient Sheikah tribe, and the cultures of its world. Yes, there are other mysteries such as the Zonai, but they exist to give the world a sense of history and depth, while offering questions with no clear answers. They also represent a small portion of the game's content. The bulk of the game, as is typical of Nintendo's approach, was built to support this singular focus, and would have been weakened if designed with a sequel in mind. They did it this way because their design focused on discovery, and part of that is having a compelling world that rewards exploration with context about its world. That context would be far less rewarding if the bulk of it was completely unrelated to the current plot. But a sequel needs something new to investigate. However, the gap between the games is so small, and the existing locations tied to it so few and vague, the new elements have to be invasive, so they fall from the sky or rise from the depths. Suddenly, there's a new mystery layered on top of an old, completely unrelated one. Breath of the Wild's world doesn't complement this new plot. It happens in spite of it, not because of it. That disconnect forces Nintendo to make several seemingly arbitrary choices. Many of these changes had to feel wrong, because the original world was designed with a specific purpose, and that purpose was never meant to align with a sequel. The only way to really make it work would require you to make the game so that it is fundamentally not standalone, because so much of Breath of the Wild was designed with only itself in mind. But I'm not convinced that kind of sequel should be made, because no matter how well written, it wouldn't fix the broken gear driving the engine of discovery. If anything, it would make the problem worse, as doing this right would involve making even fewer changes to make sure continuity aligns. All this is why so much of Tears of the Kingdom feels like a sequel trying not to be a sequel. Its parts are fundamentally incompatible, so it feels alien to itself. It's trying to retrofit an engine that runs on Discovery to run on Rediscovery. And if you can't fix Discovery, why would you bother trying to fit a square peg in a round hole? If Rediscovery was the goal, Nintendo should have radically redesigned the game to fit a more semi-linear, story-based format that would actually complement it. On that note, it does make me curious to see how Koei Tecmo is going to approach the upcoming Age of Imprisonment. It really has the chance to beef up the narrative of Tears of the Kingdom thanks to its more linear structure. But this is Koei Tecmo we're talking about, and they don't exactly have great writing chops. And all of this is assuming it's not just another time-traveling fanfiction like Age of Calamity. So we'll have to wait and see, but I wouldn't put too high hopes on it fixing the problems with Tears of the Kingdom's story. So this route would likely lead to ruin. What about working around the gear? Would you try to find a way to bring back Discovery? How? You could argue that fixing the sky and the depths is the solution, but ask yourself, why do you think Nintendo recycled the world in the first place? It clearly wasn't out of a desire to make a straight sequel, considering the state of the story. So if Nintendo had no desire for a direct follow-up, and the resources to fix the sky and the depths, why not just make a new world instead? Because there's no fix for them that wouldn't take more effort than just creating a new world from scratch. If discovery is your focus, there's no universe where you wouldn't just make a new world if you had the resources or willingness to do so. So I can't imagine either option was ever on the table, because if they were, Nintendo wouldn't have tried to find a workaround in the first place. Then how do you fix it? Should you even fix it? Because here's the funny thing. New players get 3 working gears. And at first glance, that makes it seem like everything might just be fine. The feedback from testing is extremely positive, because all the strengths from Breath of the Wild are there in full force. The world doesn't feel off to them, because without a point of comparison, it's hard to tell what's wrong. The depths and the sky are fun diversions for them instead of having to be load-bearing. The genuinely impressive technology underpinning Ultrahand is allowing players to express themselves like never before, even convincing new audiences to give the game a try. What flaws remain are seemingly outweighed by the positives. By all accounts, it looks like you might have outdone yourself. Even returning players don't seem that disappointed. They're excited to revisit old areas. In testing, you can see players rush to places like the Great Plateau, Korok Forest, and the various cities. For a moment, it seems like, despite the odds, it might work for both new and old players. But that's an illusion, because no matter how much we want it, no matter how nice it would be, discovery only happens once. What starts as excitement in hour 20 turns into complacency. You realize the feeling from before isn't coming back. You're having fun, but it's not the same high. And you can't quite place why. What's wrong? All the elements are there, just like last time. You should want to explore every corner and conquer every shrine. You were excited to see how the land had changed, at least at first. So where did your desire go? Then you look at the plains stretching out before you, the same ones you traveled 6 years ago. Both you and they have changed, so you reminisce. You remember climbing a tree to grab an apple, only to get blasted to bits by a guardian before you could get down. Tears of the Kingdom simply nods and starts talking about Gloomhands instead, saying staying up there is actually a great way to avoid them. It seems to have no idea what a guardian even is. Your stories never line up. Tears of the Kingdom isn't interested in telling you what's changed. It only wants to tell you what's new. It offers you its hand and says, let's forget about the past. There's a new adventure awaiting. So you take it. You go with Tears of the Kingdom. You never grow close to it the way you did 6 years ago. That distance becomes palpable as you realize here you are a stranger in a known land. Because while you may know Tears of the Kingdom does not know you. So you struggle to connect with this new journey because this land means something else to you. For a while, you try to just enjoy the ride, to get lost in the echoes of a place you once loved. But eventually the moment comes when you have to wake up. You have to wake the windfish eventually. But that awakening doesn't have to be a rude one. Leaving the dream isn't always goodbye. Because you took it with you. The people, the places, the things, they live on in you. And as the melodic notes of Marin's song reach your ears, you know the working gear has been there inside you all along. You didn't break the dream. Because 6 years ago, that gear took you on an unforgettable journey. The engine never broke or changed. You took its gear with you when you finished Breath of the Wild and carried it into the sequel. So when Tears of the Kingdom requests that you give the working gear back, would you even want them to take it? Breath of the Wild only works once because it stuck with you, and there's beauty in that alone, even if it ended up breaking Tears of the Kingdom for you. Thanks for watching. Anyways, that's the end of the video. If you liked it, please subscribe, leave a like, and share it with others. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. I would love to answer them. Also, this is my very first video I've made of really any kind, so have mercy on me. Anyways, I hope you have a great day and take care. Bye!